sounded like it was working okay, which is nice. I want to know what you guys think about these people who comment about Elon Musk. Well, he's rich, so therefore he's self. I don't understand, like, how do you come to these conclusions? Imagine that the cost of riding an airplane, instead of $500, it was $500,000. Imagine if that was the deal. Well, if he's utilizing his resources to reduce the cost of flying in a rocket or sending some payload in a rocket by 1,000-fold, why is that? How is that selfish? Because it's not even, he's not printing money, right, to devalue other people's dollars. He's actually reducing the actual cost of resources it takes to launch an actual rocket. And if that's the case, well, don't you need a few resources to pull something like that off? Especially if it's in the few, billions of dollars. So what? So Elon has some assets that he's controlling in order to get this accomplished. How does that automatically make him a selfish person when it's pretty clear that if he did not have control over these resources, the government wouldn't get it done. Someone working in some office who's engineered their job to suck money from taxpayers, they're not going to get the job done. So, like, complaining about him having those resources when you can clearly see that he's using his time, to get these things done, and the things that he's getting done are reducing the actual necessary value to, input to get the result. How does that make him selfish? I mean, it's like if I was in the military and I said to the general who's trying to organize where all his troops are going to go, oh, you're just selfish because you have a high rank and you're trying to tell everyone what to do. And it's like, well, is everyone going to figure out what to do without like an ordered hierarchy like that? Who's, holy crap, do I really have 20 people that just joined at once? That's a big number. Where am I going? Why do you need to know? I'm going somewhere that I typically go pretty often. You can try to guess what part of the country that I'm in. Then look at the road, don't crash. Well, I don't have anything to look at except for maybe a few live chat messages here or there. That's it. Why are you driving? I've been driving off and on as a job since 2018 when things fell through at the company I was at the intern at. I had an internship and I was very angry that they extended my internship to another 3 months because I basically had done everything I had asked, worked every hour that I logged, and I had ideas that I never had presented to the company I was at, right? They believed in formal verification. They were supposedly looking for a quote-unquote Haskell expert, to create the semantics in for their logic system. But maybe because of my transcript, I don't know, maybe because I did bad in like some math class, which was, by the way, harder than a typical math class, and also at a not only was it at a top university, but I was also trying to squeeze in like classes, I guess, that when my financial situation was really bad. Because if you rewind even further, back in like 2010-ish timeline, I had saved up I just had pocket change. I had like $20,000. I had bought silver, and like the price had went down. And so as a student, I was kind of afterwards, after I was in the military, I was having to pay for everything using whatever benefits I had. And uh, I didn't really want to take out loans. That's why I joined the military in the first place. But that's kind of the situation I was in. So I was just, you know, trying to get by without being too unhealthy and stressed about things. But I didn't do that great of a job at that. But I still loved learning. I still loved taking classes. And if I didn't do that well in the class because my life didn't feel that balanced, I would retake those classes. So, yeah. I guess tomorrow's election day. Somebody texted me. So I'm probably not going to be doing any working or driving, apparently. So why did I have 20 viewers and then it dropped down to 4? Somebody said, why are you driving? Well, let me ask you guys something. I used to want to be a YouTuber back in like 2012. I do not make any money from YouTube anymore because once they required the two-factor authentication, I decided I don't want to be dependent on anything that forces me to use some organization that I have no control over. And that would be whoever links my SIM card to my phone number. If they force you to use that, that's different than making it as an option. So I could put like, a BSB donation address or something like that, but um, instead, I think it's better that I try to put together an actual company that's built to make uh, these parse tree editor tools. Why? Because I think they work. I think they'll actually be successful. And I mean, it might be a similar type thing with Bitcoin, where you know, it works if people are using it. Business has to have people using the tools for it to work. But if a lot of people are writing code, so what's the issue with me driving? Is that a bad thing? Everyone left. I can't believe 20 people were there and then suddenly they left again. So it's down to 2 again. That's crazy. Someone tell me why these people are so obsessed about Elon Musk being selfish just because he has money. What do I have to do to convince people that like automation is a good thing? Like even a lady that I know who's a Trump supporter, and but what I don't get is like Elon Musk wants to increase the GDP, right? He wants robots because they get labor done, which frees you up to go do other things. But there's some people that actually think that somehow jobs themselves are a commodity, and they're not. There's so many things that need to be done. I want to create a business and hire people. It would be awesome if food was cheaper, gas was cheaper, everything was cheaper. We could be software developers and work on other things. That's the way I see it. And I would definitely hire people and start a business if it was easier to do so, if it was cheaper to do so. But you have to have the means to do something. And automation produces more value. So ultimately, automation should free us up to be able to have more software developers, more operating system developers, things like that. If you don't have automation, how did I have 20 viewers and then it went down to 0? People are like, I don't want to listen to this guy. Let me know, guys. What do you think? Because I feel like I think like Elon Musk in that sense. You want to increase the GDP, right? I feel like I have Ayn Rand's and Craig Wright's philosophy on, economics. Government should not be, interfering with trade. No one commented anything. They just said, "Don't crash." They just said, "Look at the road." Um, yeah, I'm on a road, not a street, so there's not all these little side things where somebody can come out of nowhere. There's like I can see like a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles ahead practically and see what's going on. So um, if I'm looking down for a second, it's not like something can come out of nowhere because there's nothing for any. I can see like way out in front of me and I can see way behind me and there's nothing anywhere. And if there is, I'm keeping track of it. So uh, I don't think it's that big of a problem. I'm just driving and I'm just wanting to use my time to think and talk. So if you guys want to participate in that, you can. If not, you don't have to. It's your choice. I just I'm just trying to make use of my time. So that's it. So let me know what you guys think about that. Is that is Elon Musk selfish just because he has a control over a lot of resources? No, he's doing exactly what somebody I would want somebody to do with resources. Learn how to automate things and make things like, for example, like space travel cheaper because that's expensive and not expensive like it costs dollars that you can just print. It's expensive as in you actually need it actually costs resources that are lost. So there's a difference. There's a difference. Anyone can print, fiat currency and but real value, real construction of say a spaceship, that costs a lot of resources because you have to those people need food and shelter and they need you have educated people building this stuff. You have all sorts of things going into that stuff. That costs the world something, it costs the economy something to produce that. So to increase the rate of return on investment on something like that is a big deal. Because having things out in space has been useful, GPS, and having it 1,000 times cheaper to launch something into space is going to be a really nice return on investment opportunity. And it's also like, who knows? You look thousands of years in the future. What if there's like, what if SpaceX has got us on a few different got some colonies out there, got some asteroids being harvested or something, and then maybe Blue Origin has built some kind of, like rotating cylinder habitat, and we're out there doing interesting things because things were made cheaper. I mean, what else? What else? What else? How else would you describe our society so far? It's always been innovation and automation. Since about the time of Jesus, the population has basically exploded. If you use basically a crude mathematical plot of essentially the population of the world, and it just involved like a division. There's a very basic formula that matched very closely, and obviously you can't have infinite people, but according to that actual formula, it was very closely matching with the human population, and it was essentially asymptotic at basically when Jesus was born. So like he appeared when a very crude approximation of the number of people to exist would be infinite. So obviously it's just a you know it's just a division plot. You can't logically have an infinite number of people all of a sudden from a finite number of people. But that just shows you like what that's I mean that is a singularity. That's where the model breaks down. Yeah, interesting things like this that happen. We made the lathe, we made the printing press, and the more we automated things, we didn't just suddenly have people that just don't have, jobs anywhere. What we have is we have more resources and then more, social issues to deal with, but we also have more jobs available. And Gödel, I mean, he already showed there's essentially infinite axioms. So it's kind of funny because people think like, well, we can never successfully, organize all of mathematics into one logic system. It's like, okay, but why do you see that as such a negative thing? I mean, you're talking about the nature of math itself. You're not talking about a specific universe, right? So if that's how it is, I mean, we have infinite axioms. We don't have, when you say we don't have, there's no such thing as a complete system that Gödel proved. That's like, some people think of that somehow, they somehow think of it as like a negative thing, but it also implies that we never, like, you can also think of it as we never run out of axioms. So like math is like, it's more complex, where you can think of it as always being more interesting in some sense. So I don't know. I don't think we would just run out of jobs, but how would you? I mean, jobs aren't the thing that produce the food, so it's a social problem ultimately. Because the person making the money with the robots, what are they going to buy with all that money? Services, right? They're only gonna. It's only going to be worth. They're only going to be. It's only going to be worthwhile for them to have money, and this is what happened with the medallion fund. They actually have to limit how many investors they have, because if they have too many investors in the medallion fund, it doesn't actually work, because it's like so off the charts efficient. It works so well that it breaks the economy itself, but it also breaks the medallion fund's own way of doing things if they play the market too much, because they're literally that good. Like, they have to actually restrict, because they're so, like, you talk about the top investors in the world in all of history, and then you suddenly go from that and you jump like 1,000 times better, and there's this huge gap, and you got this like alien type thing like medallion fund. It's like, where do they get, where is like, it's like looking at Ramanujan as a mathematician. It's like that a human came up with this. I don't even know, how do you believe that a human even came up with this? Because it's the computational aspect of it doesn't even make sense that a human brain could have like figured some of this out. So it almost makes sense that his story is actually true. That he actually did get the information from, his family goddess or whatever. So the people who own the robots, they are going to do a couple things, right? They're going to train others in whatever companies they're investing in. They're going to start using those resources, since they have so many resources, to then start training and providing education. That's what happens. It's not like everybody just loses their jobs and suddenly, everyone except the CEO starves to death. That's not how money works. That's not how the economics would work at that point. I mean, you kind of have like a temporary effect of that. When people kind of conclude that, like, I don't get this lady I was arguing with, I don't get why she didn't understand. I explained to her, I'm like, look, where's the guy right now who used to skin buffalo 200 years ago? He's out of a job right now. Where is he? We need to take care of him and his family, right? And she said, that's not the same thing. Well, that's automation. That is essentially what happens over time. So people stopped commenting about why I was driving this. So yeah, gotta check something. Wow. So I'm just doing a chit chat live stream with subscribers. When I was making calculator programming videos back in 2013, you got to understand, I was doing that exact same thing, almost nothing different at all, back in like basically 2003. So that was another 10 years beforehand. So when I was making these videos, it was literally, I was going to these high level math classes, trying to figure out advanced topics. I was modeling how would I create a parser editor with Haskell and all this stuff. And people would comment, and I was literally teaching other top international students how to deal with the C programming language. Hold on a second. Sorry, I had a GPS talking to me, and I don't like how Google Maps keeps repeating the same thing like 3 times. When it's like, I already know what I'm doing, so please don't repeat to me as I'm talking. Google Maps, by the way, has sucked for over 10 years. I made a video about it 10 years ago. They don't, I believe the guy 100% who said, smart people are not always successful, and then he described how he worked at Google and how all the smart people left. I 100% believe that. Makes perfect sense to me, because everything, even my dad would point out when, like, Windows 7 and Windows Vista would come out, they never changed anything fundamental. They would just reskin there's so many things that you can change about an operating system. And I would mention this to people, and people in the Army, they'd be like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's like, no, it's completely broken to the core then. Okay, like, if we need to redefine what broke means, then this thing is like you're trying to build a house in a sewer. So you need to get out of the sewer and start building a house on the surface of the earth, because that's like, I don't know how you have to stretch these analogies, but when I look at an operating system and I think what it could be instead of what it is, there's a vast difference. It's not like, oh, you need to tweak a couple little things. No, it's actually the entire foundational design. It can be completely redone from the ground up, all the way from the ground up. Everything. And that doesn't mean that the basics are not true. The foundational mathematics are not true. That doesn't mean that it's, look, lambda calculus is Turing complete, and The Turing machine is Turing complete. You can simulate. This is the thing that you have to realize. You can simulate, one programming language with another. But are these people who understand that? Are they understanding that you also need an efficient way to express? Have they analyzed large programs and thought about how do you express this in an abstract, general way? Is it going to look like code? And my answer would be no, it doesn't look like the typical code that's structured with these ad hoc kind of, not just programming language filed states, but like the linkers. The linkers are not even formally defined. No, there's no definition exactly that precisely describes how a linker even is supposed to work. So, and these people don't understand that. They'll get on, they would get on my case and they would say, well, there's no such thing as a bullet. But that was never proven. That was just some assertion that some scientists had made about, coming up with a solution. But what do we have with, for example, calculus of inductive constructions? How does that work, and what do we have with it? Well, number one, it's a logic system that is able to refer to itself in a very consistent way. So it doesn't break Gödel's proof, but it still is it's still very self-referential logic system that you can abstract on. So number one, you can build on it. Number two, you have practical examples to show that it actually works, because they did a proof of the four-coloring theorem using that system as the basis for the COQ software. And number three, well, it's a type system for land accountants. So you have something that has every piece of evidence showing you that it has what programming languages don't have, because they're not a formally constructed, proven to be normalizable system, like a system that's described by a grammar, which you can create proofs not just by typing text and trying to compile it. No, you can make formal tree transformations and construct a proof or a program in this type of system. And something like C or something like Python, where people keep changing it and editing it, that's not the same thing. And I don't care how many programming languages I don't care if it's Lisp. Compared to a formal math logic system, especially one that is designed from the top down to be complete for what its purpose is, you can't use those other systems to compare to it and then assert that, no such thing as a silver bullet exists. Oh, enough people looking at the code, they'll find the bugs. They'll when you have enough people looking at it, they'll refine it to be in the best state or whatever. It's like, yeah, but the whole thing is still built. It still has a separate definition for the structure of files than it does for the structure of, like, namespaces, for example. Like, you haven't unified those two together. You haven't unified both of those things with the definition of, like, how your primitives work. You haven't unified those together with the definition of how the logical inferencing of your type functions work. You haven't unified those together with the definitions of what your regular functions are. You haven't unified those together with what your semantic construction, when you're writing your actual code, and you're designing your code, you're creating things using classes. So the logic that you're using to define how your classes are related to each other, or the definition of the logic that you're using to construct how your interfaces are linked together, those are not unified with those other logic systems. They're all separated. They're all ad hoc and they're all separated into different things. When you look at a logic system like calculus of inductive constructions, you can't just say, well, that's not just some BS French stuff. They're just trying to make money. Hello, they just solved the problem of basically unifying all those things into one system. And it's normalizable. So you have one system, but it's not like a hairy, scary, pure lambda calculus system. It's a system which normalizes, so that means you can compute all the types, you can reduce it, and you can define everything, you can structure everything in it. And you can associate those things with data. So now you don't need to worry about rules about, oh, this is called a folder, and inside of a folder you can put another folder or another file. Oh, and by the way, we're just gonna define a rule that says, well, this particular account has, security access to this particular set of subfolders, and we think that works. Instead, you have something where you can actually prove across all these different systems, you can actually prove things that, mathematically, that work. So, what do you think of Jamsy Coin? Have you heard of it? Thanks. I need to make a screenshot of that because I don't think I know what Jamsy Coin is. Jamsy Coin? I'll probably look back on some screenshots and make a video about these coins that I've been asked about. Because, yeah, I don't know. I want to know, but I don't know. I don't mind being asked about coins. It's just that there's not really a reason to need more coins if you have BSV. Because if it's going to be a coin, BSV works as a commodity. And it's also Turing complete. Like when you understand what BSV is, you realize why you don't need the other coins. And it's not the same argument when I would hear people saying, well, we're just going to stick with BTC. I used to think that it was dumb when people said we only need Bitcoin. Well, technically, their understanding of which one is Bitcoin is wrong, but technically the statement is correct. If they're referring to BSV, then actually that I would say it's correct now because BSV scales and it works as like a base network in a way that BTC does not. It works in a way that lets you do the smart contracts, and you do the looping, I guess, on the side, not like in the node, but you can do the looping by making more transactions. So they don't understand. You're supposed to scale the network and add services, but you're not supposed to do layer twos that replace the whole being able to buy and sell option. Lightning is just shifting coins. That's kind of not a smart way. That's not a necessary way of doing things. So I want to make I want to make this idea that I thought of years ago. And if other people don't understand it, that's fine. But I need to be able to work, understand resources to hire them, or I just need to be able to work with other people who I can work with to kind of create some of these things. And if somebody understands abstract stuff better than me, fine, that's great. But you know, so I don't even know. I don't even know if you guys can tell by the light or whatever what even part of the world I'm in right now. I'm sure you can guess which country. Uh, but that's not important per se for my subscribers to be talking about where exactly I am, what exactly I'm driving to do. And just I'm driving, okay? That's it. That's all that matters. And yeah, I drive a lot. Big deal. What else do you want? Why does it matter? What matters is I don't want to have to drive a lot. That's the thing. So, and no, I'm not seeking, I don't want just, I don't want, I used to not want any donations at all because I just felt like it would, you know, cost people. When I was making my calculator programming videos, I was excited because I thought that I could get some income from YouTube. But having the two-factor authentication thing, man, I want to switch. We need to build social media on BSV. I can't believe Twitch. I don't know if it doesn't work anymore or what. You guys know anything about Twitch? I want to use that. You guys know anything about like a video service built on BSV? I want to use that. I want to move on to that. I want to make a BitHub instead of a GitHub because I want to put code on Bitcoin and it would be efficient. Do not tell me it would not be efficient to do so because Git is already good at not making you need copies of your code. Git is very intelligent at how it structures everything. It only keeps track of the deltas. So that means even if you rebase, it doesn't matter. You're not producing a lot more data. You're just producing more ways to look at combining your code and the hashes. So it's really secure and it's very intelligent at how it works. The only problem I have with Git is that I don't want to be working with my particular idea for a project with text. I would say scripting parameter, if you want to call it that. And I disagree with that. I don't think that's a good thing. That doesn't automatically mean that you throw it out, though. I mean, if anything, I think it would be good to make a real GitHub on Bitcoin anyway, as it stands with regular Git. And then also, I want to recycle the concepts of Git when I build my own tools. So it's not, I'm not talking down. It's like Minecraft, I came up with my own design for a game and I decided I had a much better design for a game that I would rather play. And that doesn't mean that I'm against Minecraft being a game. It just means that I came up with another game that I would rather, that I think has better, that it's a better design. And I could implement it or not. And the fact that something's implemented is an important step. That's an important part of the process. Because if you're just talking about theory, but it's not implemented, then the thing doesn't exist. Bitcoin had to be put out there with the Genesis block for the thing to really take off. You couldn't just put the white paper out there and then it gets lost on some, in history with all of Craig's other stuff. You know, you can write all the papers in the world, but nobody in industry is necessarily going to see it. Same with calculus of inductive constructions. You got all these papers, you got all this research and all this math, and it's so good. It's like gold. When you understand what it is, it's like, this stuff is gold, man. This stuff is awesome. And it's like industry world is not gonna, they're not gonna know about it. They're really not gonna be aware of it unless you make it, unless you implement something. That's just how it is. That's just how it's been. So, uh, I like the way Kurt thinks, but I also respect the situation that Craig is in. I don't know if I think a lot like him all the time, and I'm guessing he's a lot smarter than me. Kurt, I don't know who's smarter, but I don't really care all the time who's smarter. What I care about is, can I work with this person, and do they understand? Like, between me and Kurt, I don't know who would have technically, the higher IQ or whatever. I don't really know, necessarily that much about him, but I do know that one of the things that I like about him is that he recognizes that when Satoshi first put the paper out there, that everyone would start arguing with him from the very beginning. That's like one of the first things that started happening. And he recognizes that. So to me, that's important because from my experience, somebody has to have that. For me to work with somebody at these levels of planning, they have to at least have something like that. Like, they have to have at least either an intuition like that or something, or a level of intelligence that is going to, you know, make sense to try to respect that I'm actually trying to also build something. So that's one of the things I like about Kurt. In a lot of ways, I kind of think like him, and he also, because of his kind of martial arts background, I've had experience just because military and whatnot, high school, military, third party, just gyms or whatever. I respect that world a little bit. I'm not too heavy in the martial arts world, but just I've been exposed now and then, every once in a while, and there's personalities out there that are different from mine, but that I have respect for. There's, like, for example, I feel like I'm an opposite of, like, somebody who's a chef, and yet chefs, a lot of times, I like their personalities because just the way they think is so. They're so intuitive about a lot of things that I like it. Like, I value it because I think that it's kind of cool. Like, I think it's actually really interesting. And so, like, it's kind of like that, um, it's like you find someone who is also a fan of your team, I guess. If I were into sports or something, that's how I feel about it. Um, And I never really thought that I would do business, like find opportunities and stuff from subscriber on YouTube. But I am blown away that, I find this one, I think they're a subscriber, but all I know is that they've seen some of my content and commented on it. And man, it's just so interesting the fact that some people are able to make, educational websites to train people about stuff, to help others learn. And that the fact that they know how to code all this type of stuff, and yet at the same time, when I present some, logic related stuff to them, they'll be like, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about with that," and I'm like thinking, fine, great, because I don't know how to do the JavaScript type stuff that you're really good at. So, if I can share my vision enough to where you get it, and you're like, "Oh, you're not just making $1,000 idea, you're making a $10 billion idea. Wow, Tim, I can't believe I didn't get that part at least." At least somebody who gets it enough can be like, "Okay, here, let me I want to make part of the JavaScript part of this, So, that's what I want. I want to find someone who knows how to do something, but they're not just going to be annoyed with me that I need to somehow hire them. If I had the money, fine, I'll hire someone. But I also would like if somebody has enough of a vision where they realize why they want to be part of something. Because if their thought process is why do you want me to work for you for free? Well, they're not under, they don't value, it's probably because they don't actually understand what I'm trying to build. Because if they did, they probably wouldn't see it as somebody is doing work for me. It's we're building something really interesting. So I don't want, I'm not just, it's like Elon Musk, part of him was just, let's just go to Mars. I don't care if I have to be the one to make the company. I don't really care. I just want us to go there. You know what I mean? That's what he wants. He just wants, he thinks that it's not going to be good if we don't try hard enough to go there. We need to actually put in the effort, in a way that's going to work, and actually try to get to this Mars planet with something, with something that's more sustainable than just a couple robots. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about this type of technology. Fine, if somebody else, I'm glad that somebody else made Bitcoin, because I would not want to relive everything that Craig is living through right now. Right? I would not want to relive through everything that anyone else has really done. I wouldn't want to be, right? I want to open the world to being able to make source and proofs using a system that will make it more outdated to use a text editor and then a sort of a parsing stage compiler, or a type inferencing stage compiler, or a notebook with pencils. Have to recopy every time you're doing math. You have to recopy everything as you go. It's not the fact that you're doing math with pencil and paper. That's not it. It's the fact that the way you're doing the math requires you to copy and rewrite everything down. That's the thing. So, improve and change, because the way I understand it is we should be able to do everything. We should be able to do so many things dynamically. This has nothing to do with reskinning existing systems. This has nothing to do with technology versus non-technology, digital versus non-digital, except the fact that the way I'm solving the problem is basically in a digital way. This has nothing to do with AI being the tool that we're using to do this. AI developers might use it, but like my idea is a fundamental approach to how you make software in general and how you make proofs in general. It's also fundamentally, like I think it's a way to show it's a way to show that we can redo. We can rebuild operating systems from the ground up, like as though we didn't have computers, and then we will have, and we can actually start from scratch from like a CPU. And instead of writing code in a procedural way and then abstracting on that by making a high-level programming language, which we have to run a complete stage compiler to convert into that code, instead you can run a basically like a compiler type function, and it's not something that takes an entire code base structure as an independent program, but it's rather something that just unravels into, it's basically a function that says, I'm not doing other math. I'm not doing these other things that functions typically do, but what I'm doing is another type of input-output type thing, where it's another type of special purpose. And it just happens to be that that special purpose is unraveling the computation to be basically machine code or assembly. And like it's similar to the concept of just-in-time compilation, except just-in-time compilation is like it. The problem with that concept is that by definition, it's already assuming that you're using a programming language that has a separate stage compiler, and you're using something like that's basically considered to just be a file structure to store your data. So the concept, mathematical structuring concept behind just-in-time compilation is different than the actual term just-in-time compilation. Mathematical structure behind it, that's the thing that's more has to do with of, and also the concept that you are basically producing data that can be executed directly on a CPU. And you can take those two concepts and you can formalize them into a function instead of assuming that you have to do those in a file structure. I want to show, like, I want to show like examples of this, but the problem is I can tell my subscribers about it all day, every day, and try to convince you guys all day, every day for decades, and try to tell you guys about it. Hey, this could be $1 billion business. But then if you guys don't see why that's true, then there's no point in like, it's not going to take any traction because you can't even communicate that to others to prove to them, like as an investor, why that's true to do something like a Kickstarter. Because you won't even understand it yourself. Even if you believe me, you're not going to be able to like, understand it. So I mean, I could talk about this all day, but I'm not going to keep doing that because it's not really going to get anywhere, right? I can only show so much, but just like Craig said, I don't have time to just explain it to you forever. He has to kind of at some point say, hey guys, I got other stuff that I got to do. And Satoshi's, he's got to disappear for a while. And he's not leaving because he's not I mean, he's not, he has to get something done, at Enchain or whatever. He has to make Terranode. If Blockstream doesn't understand Terranode, look, don't blame him. They're the ones who are asserting that first of all, that he's not Satoshi, and second of all, that BSV doesn't scale, and third of all, that you need Lightning instead, and they're the ones asserting all that, not him. So don't blame him for disappearing. Because he's just doing what makes sense. If you really think about it, developing Terranode was the next thing that makes sense in the process. On the right time scales, if you think about the time scales from the BSV perspective. That's what I'm starting to realize from this. But I also want to be, I'm not a dark shadowy figure like that either. I'm not some anonymous person either. So I don't have to be kind of like, oh, by the way, guys, you never knew who I was this entire time. I developed this entire system without you knowing about it. I have systems that I've developed, like a lambda calculus reduction system or whatever, but I don't make YouTube videos about it because I figure, I can't just put everything, I can't talk about everything. But, I have to communicate to the business world, and I have to kind of show the world what I'm doing. But it's just frustrating. You can't always do that when the world doesn't get what you're doing, and they just think it's dumb. They just might look at what you're doing, and they might just think, oh, but this is just stupid. Or someone else takes your idea and runs with it. When Notch made Minecraft, right? He actually took a game that another guy made. It was called Infinite Miner, and he literally took it and then he made it so you had to pay for an account, right? And he got money through PayPal. But somebody else basically made a Minecraft style game that Notch literally played and looked at online and basically copied. He was just like, oh, cool. Let me make this myself and then sell it to people. So the guy who made Infinite Miner, he made this voxel game, but he didn't make any of the billions that Minecraft ended up being worth. Right? So and I'm not saying you want to just do things for money, but maybe you want to do things, and I love how Craig is a good example of this. You want to you want to have control over the technology enough to make sure it gets done correctly. And that's one thing that I love about the whole Bitcoin story, is it expresses my own story in that I was trying to build something, and I didn't want just my own control over it. I didn't want to own my own intellectual property for the sake of just getting rich or making more money for myself instead of somebody else, but because I felt like I had to make sure that it things are developed properly. You can't just take one idea formal verification and just run with it, but then forget that you can literally separate every part of the process of tree transformation, constructing in the first place. So I have to make sure that what I understand at least gets done. Otherwise, I'm disappointed in the technology because everyone cheers over a technology that's 1,000 times worse than what it could have been, and that's actually disappointing. It's disappointing even if you make money. So, like I usually do, I'm going to try to cut this off at an hour. It was nice talking to you guys.